Hare Krishna, everybody. Dhanavad Pranam.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna, bro.
Hare Krishna. So we are back to the Bhagavad Vicara. Let's quickly summarize what we did last Wednesday. We started chapter 13, which basically describes the sannyas dharma. In the previous chapter, we heard about the brahmacharis, the vanaprasthas. Now here we're hearing about sannyasis. So we covered first, I think, six shlokas. So in the first three, conduct of sannyasi was described, how he should behave, how should be detached, not dependent, travel, what he wears, and things like that. Should live alone, live on alms, be peaceful, completely surrendered. And then further we have descriptions of consciousness of sannyasi. He sees Supreme Lord everywhere, everything in the Supreme Lord. He should be understanding the soul, the self, observes the power of time. And now we are on the shloka 7. Well, let me see, shloka 7. Oh yes, this one. So I will start it. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya. Chakshu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So Narada Muni is talking to King Yudhishthira. Nasach chat chastreshu sajita nopajivita jivikam vadavadam stejit tarkan pakshan kamcha na samshayat. Literature that is useless waste of time. In other words, literature without spiritual benefit should be rejected. One should not become a professional teacher as a means of earning one's livelihood, nor should one indulge in arguments and counter-arguments. Nor should one take shelter of any cause or faction. Purport. A person desiring to advance in spiritual understanding should be extremely careful to avoid reading ordinary literature. The world is full of ordinary literature that creates unnecessary agitation in the mind. Such literature, including newspapers, dramas, novels, and magazines, is factually not meant for advancement in spiritual knowledge. Indeed, it has been described as a place of enjoyment for crows. Tadvayasam tirtam. Anyone advancing in spiritual knowledge must reject such literature. Furthermore, one should not concern oneself with the conclusions of various logicians or philosophers. Of course, those who preach sometimes need to argue with the contentions of opponents, but as much as possible one should avoid an argumentative attitude. In this connection, Srila Madhvacharya says, Aprayojana paksham na samshayet na prayojana pakshisyan na vrita shishya bandha krit na chodasi na shastrani na virudhani chabhyasit na vyakya yopajiveta na nishadhan samacharit evam bhutto yatiryati tad eka sharano harim. There is no need to take shelter of unnecessary literature or concern oneself with the many so-called philosophers and thinkers who are useless for spiritual advancement. Nor should one accept a disciple for the sake of fashion or popularity. One should be callous to these so-called shastras, neither opposing nor favoring them, and one should not earn one's livelihood by taking money for explaining Shastra. A sannyasi must always be neutral and seek the means to advance in spiritual life. taking full shelter under the lotus feet of the Lord. Missionary Tagore comments, furthermore, one should not take either side. Just before we go back, this caught my attention. Then one should not earn one's livelihood by taking money for explaining Shastra. This is from Vishnu Charitak. No, this is Prabhupada, yeah, saying. Because in the verse it was mentioned that one should not become a professional teacher. Then you could ask, what about these teachers teaching in the school all sort of subjects, academic subjects, math, science, this or that. They have to live for something, and this is their profession, so they're receiving salary for that, and that's okay. But teaching Shastra is a different thing. You know, for example, if you're teaching Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam or anything, and charging money for that, that's not accepted. But somehow recently or in the recent years, I've seen some devotees, making a courses and charging for the courses. Uh, I don't think this is a very good sign. Making livelihood from spiritual knowledge, it's not good for anybody. One should somehow or other find another mean of livelihood. And Shastra should be given, freely, indiscriminately, whoever wants to learn. Otherwise, everything becomes, business, corrupted, and there can be no real transmission of knowledge if that is done with some material motivations. Yeah, that was one point, but
Can I? Oh, sorry. Please complete your points. Sorry.
okay, you can say if you have something now or later, no problem.
I was just the same point that you just made. I mean, it's becoming more common practice even within ISKCON now, isn't it? Where a lot of preachers, quite famous preachers, who go around doing katha
Mhm.
1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 7 day kathas around the world, where they actually expect to be paid not just cost covered. I can understand. Okay, travel costs, etc., is one thing, but there's
Mhm.
also a fee involved for doing these things. So doesn't that constitute professional preaching?
Yeah, it's a professional preaching. I mean, they're copying, modern day self-help, gurus who are charging thousands of dollars for their, courses. Who was that? Some famous people, who are very good counselors and can teach on so many psychological subjects, and they have very, highly paid courses. So I guess this is the influence that is coming from outside, and we think, we need to be self-confident and people will value what they pay for, but it's not meant for spiritual knowledge. Yeah, I'm glad that you also noticed the trend. I was thinking maybe just me, but I noticed quite a few of some online, some on site.
Yeah.
But
And,
even
and
for the yeah.
the problem is that look, I'm going to use a counter argument here as well, because I think you're absolutely right. I think Prabhupada's made it very clear continuously in his purports and his translations that professional reciters should be avoided, and if we're falling into the same trap. But on the flip side, if your varna is to be a sort of a preacher, a Brahmin, and you should therefore try and preach. How do you earn a livelihood in today's world where the Grihastha ashram doesn't necessarily support fully those who are preaching, in Brahmin order?
Yes, somehow or other one should depend on Krishna. But yeah, then just take a job. I mean, better than making a mockery of preaching and becoming a
Yeah.
professional preacher and making courses. I mean, you can do this with things like, astrology, Vastu, all these subsidiary Vedic sciences. that you give some professional consultation. But directly teaching Shastra, then I wouldn't do that with the Shastra, because then you are contradicting whatever Prabhupada said, as you mentioned, whatever, Shastra is saying. It's becoming a business. And in Vrindavan still, you see many of these professionals, they have big, kathas, and many people come and they all give big donations. I don't know how much they charge and what they charge. But at least devotees should not charge a fixed fee. Okay, people, they can say you're welcome to give a donation. And then if people really feel inspired, they will give. But yeah,
Yeah,
he
there
can
are certain
also.
preachers who are constantly doing sort of kathas and cruises and everything else, and there's so many sort of popular
Mm.
teachers who are who organize almost on a continuous basis cruises and so a particular destination for kathas, and that effectively has become a job then, isn't it?
They're becoming a job, and I know many preachers. They like to go where to Middle East, to Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and because there are a lot of people who have money there, and they have also culture. These are mostly Indian people who live there, and they have a culture that they should give, uh, and they're giving even if the preachers are not charging there, they're giving. So now they have a kind of more strict system, who is coming, who is not coming, because everybody wants to come there expecting donation. So it's becoming a circus a little bit. And then if you go to some other countries where people don't have so much culture and you speak, you might not get anything or just get a very little donation. But I mean, you have to risk. That's called preaching. So I don't know, yeah, but I'm against it. I'm completely against it, and somehow or other. If one cannot arrange for livelihood in in some other way, it would be much better to arrange in some other way than using this professional. Yeah, the cut down cruises. Yeah, I remember that also.
Another point probably is that it says here clearly, repeatedly, one should avoid arguments and getting into arguments or taking sides. But was it not the culture previously when we had all these big Digvijay Pandits, etc., um, to effectively go out and do logical arguments and support their point of views? And wasn't that a Vedic thing?
It was a traditional thing, but it was not necessarily favorable for bhakti. If you remember, Kishore Kashmiri, before he met Lord Chaitanya, he was known as Digvijay. He conquered all scholars in all directions. But uh, but it was all materialistic business, basically. It was nothing really about Krishna. It was all logic and grammar and style and language. And it was done out of ego,
But
to.
if Mahaprabhu didn't take a position and entered into the argument, he would not have been able to defeat their materialistic or Kamakand type approach or Mayavadi approach or whatever they were, whatever their position was, not favorable to bhakti. If Mahaprabhu and some of the Goswamis didn't take a position
Yeah, for the
in that
defending,
argument to overcome, in order to prove bhakti is superior,
for
then
the
how do you defeat them if you don't take a position?
Yeah, for defending Bhakti Siddhanta, the Siddhanta of pure devotional service, one is allowed and one should take. There is example of, who was it? Uh, Govinda Bhashya, Baladevidya Bhushan, arguing with all the pandas, writing that commentary. And before that, also disciples of Narottam Das Thakur, they also were sent by him to argue with some other pandits. But generally, if you see Nimai Pandit, before he went to Gaya, before he exhibited his devotional features, he was engaging in this sort of arguments and defeating, and devotees didn't many devotees didn't like it. When they would see him, they would try to run away. Who was it? Murari Gupta tried to run away, and Gadadhar, and because devotees generally don't like these arguments, dry arguments about non-devotional subjects, especially about logic, Nyaya, and the grammar and other things. It's not what it's a waste of time. What is the use of that? So as when Mahaprabhu came back from Gaya, he stopped that. He stopped all these sort of things. He didn't want to engage in this anymore. He didn't have any taste for him anymore. So devotees generally they don't feel inclined. It's a waste of time. You don't get anything unless you are asked by your guru to defend, conclusions of the Sampradaya and Gaudiya Siddhanta and things like that. Otherwise, it's a professionalism again. They also Keshava Gashmiri was also, I guess, getting some wealth through this business, traveling around. But after he met Mahaprabhu, after he was defeated, he completely stopped that and became a devotee. So his career of Digvijay was finished.
Thank you.
And yeah, you wanted to say something more?
Prabhu,
Yes, Chaturmandaji.
yeah, a very interesting was, and I want to know this ordinary literature. Does it mean all the books written by non-devotees? And sometimes we maybe have something want to know but not included in Srila Prabhupada's books about some material knowledge.
Yeah, if you really need to know that thing, I mean, you can briefly read it, learn it, apply it if you need it. But here, what is meant that daily, regularly, you're indulging in reading, mundane novels, fiction books, all sort of things that come from materialistic minds of materialistic authors who write so many things. And when Prabhupada was writing these things, that time it was still different, I would say technologically different age. Internet didn't exist. But nowadays, we have this mundane content present very easily accessible on your phones and your gadgets and your devices. So it's previously you needed, to get a book, to turn the page. Now you don't need to turn it, you just need to swipe, and immediately millions and millions of web pages talking about everything, anything in this world is there. So the danger is much more greater nowadays when you go surfing on the internet. So yeah, that
Yeah,
basically it's a content coming from materialistic minds of materialistic people. Some here in Smith, I think they give children to learn English. They need to read also some. Literature, mundane literature, because they say, oh, Prabhupada's English was so simple, they cannot really properly learn English just by reading Prabhupada's books, so they need many other books. Okay, maybe a little bit of something else, but one should be really cautious, because once you get a taste for mundane writings and the newspapers and news and so many things, it's just going out of control, and your mind is just polluted by these things, and it's very difficult to cleanse, and it's very difficult to chant peacefully Mahamantra if the mind is full of mundane content, of mundane news, of all sort of garbage. Because these are all the thoughts of materialistic people. When they write this, they invest their thoughts. They invest their materialistic mind. And then you're consuming it. By reading it, you're consuming their materialistic mind. It's like eating food cooked by non-devotees. While cooking, you are putting your mind into the food. And those who eat, they eat that consciousness. So similarly with the writing, whatever the consciousness of the writer is, it goes into that writing. And then when you read it, you're getting that consciousness. It's influencing you. So that's why we read Prabhupada's book, because it was written in transcendental consciousness. So if we read Prabhupada's books, we are getting transcendental influence on our minds, because Prabhupada's consciousness was pure Krishna consciousness. But if you read books of somebody else whose consciousness is polluted by lust, greed, envy, and other things, you're also getting then these things into your mind. So that's why it's important to be discriminating, to discriminate what we read. Yeah. Okay, we might need to hear some news here and there, but don't completely absorb your mind into this mundane news or whatever it is.
Yeah. Prabhu, but sometimes we need to know some skills or techniques, so we cannot avoid. Or sometimes maybe we want to learn some medical knowledge in order to cure our disease.
That's fine, that's fine. I mean, if you have a concrete purpose for doing this, that's fine. But here it's mostly said, leading a literature for just gratifying the mind. Why would you read some mundane novel or fiction book, like Harry Potter? Harry Potter is still good because it has Harry in the name. But if you read, especially some sensual content, polluting content. Or some crazy news about stabbings and killings and this and that, and what is the purpose of this reading? What is the goal you want to achieve? Nothing. You just time pass. They call it time pass. People don't have anything to do, so the mind is looking for something, and then these novels and literature and news are there just for the waste of time. But if you need to learn
Mm.
some skill, something that you will need and use it, that's fine. That's fine.
Srila Prabhupada used to encourage his disciples, some of those who were scientifically minded, Bhakti Swarup, some others, and others, that yes, do your PhDs, do that, but use it to defeat the mundane scientists, to show them what the real science is about Bhakti, as opposed to the mundane sciences. So yes, if we, I think the idea was, if you want to develop a skill, a material skill, as long as you can use it for service and bhakti, then it's positive. Otherwise, it's as you rightly say, self-gratifying.
Yes, correct, Prabhu. Thank you. If you have a proper motivation behind learning it, then it's completely fine. All right, I think this was the main point here. So we can go to the next verse. Who can read? The Dhanashimati says she cannot. Shailesh Prabhu, are you able to read?
Yes, Prabhu, I can read if you can do the Sanskrit for me.
Okay, I'll do the Sanskrit. Na shishyan anubandnitha granthan naiva vyased bahun na vyakyam upayunjita naramban arabed kvachit.
Translation. A sannyasi must not present allurements of material benefits to gather many disciples, nor should he unnecessarily read many books or give discourse as a means of livelihood. He must never attempt to increase material opulences unnecessarily. Purport. So-called swamis and yogis generally make disciples by alluring them with material benefits. There are many so-called gurus who attract disciples by promising to cure their diseases or increase their material opulences by manufacturing gold. These are lucrative allurements for unintelligent men. A sannyasi is prohibited from making disciples through such material allurements. Sannyasis sometimes indulge in material opulences by unnecessarily constructing many temples and monasteries, but actually, such endeavors should be avoided. Temples and monasteries should be constructed for the preaching of spiritual consciousness or Krishna consciousness, not to provide free hotels for persons who are useful for neither material nor spiritual purposes. Temples and monasteries should be strictly off limits to worthless clubs of crazy men. In the Krishna consciousness movement, we welcome everyone who agrees at least to follow the movement's regulative principles: no illicit sex, no intoxication, no meat eating, no gambling, and no gambling. In the temples and monasteries, gatherings of unnecessary, rejected, lazy fellows should be strictly disallowed. The temples and monasteries should be used exclusively by devotees who are serious about spiritual advancement in Krishna consciousness. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains the word arambhan as meaning matyadi vyaparana, which means attempts to construct temples and monasteries. The first business of sannyasis, the first business of the sannyasi is to preach Krishna consciousness. But if, by the grace of Krishna, facilities are available, then he may construct temples and monasteries to give shelter to the serious students of Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, such temples and monasteries are not needed. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He should not seek disciples out of greed or take by force. Arambhana means building temples and such. So the summary here is similar to the previous verse, that sannyasi's main job is to preach Krishna consciousness, not by allurement and not by tricking disciples, and prohibition for building temples and monasteries if they are not used for advancing spiritual devotion and Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, that's the main point. Yeah, somehow guru business is long, old, it's a old business that exists since time immemorial. Even nowadays, you can find many very popular gurus who are basically making business out of it. And then there is some scandal and everybody is disillusioned. But before that, people follow, and you just need to be a little bit charismatic, to know how to speak like a guru, how to, hand gestures and and then especially nowadays, if you invest in digital marketing, in social media marketing, you can get, good following. And then if you're lucky, you can make money out of it. So this can be a business. So those who are really renowned should strictly stay away from such allurements. And making temples also could be, used for, again, collecting money. Like Prabhupada was criticizing some of his god brothers that they just keep temple to collect donations, keep deities just like for the sake of donation boxes. It's not meant for that. It's meant for preaching purposes only. Otherwise, better not to open these places as your family business. All right. Well, let's go to the Gunaraj Prabhu. Shantarupa Mataji, you would like to read?
Yes, Prabhu.
Oh, yeah, me?
Shantarupa Mataji, and then you can read after that. Shantarupa Mataji.
Okay. न याते राश्रम प्रायो धर्म हेतुर्महात्मनः शान्तस्य समचित्तस्य बिभ्र्यादुर्त वातजेत्. Translation. A peaceful, equipoised person who is factually advanced in spiritual consciousness does not need to accept the symbols of a sannyasi, such as the Tridanda and Kamandalu. According to the necessity, he may sometimes accept those symbols and sometimes reject them. Purport. There are 4 stages of the renounced order of life: Kutichaka, Bahudaka, Parivrajakacarya, and Paramahamsa. Herein, Srimad Bhagavatam considers the Paramahamsas among the sannyasis. The Mayavadi impersonalist sannyasis cannot attain the Paramahamsa stage. This is because of their impersonal conception of the absolute truth. Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavan iti Shabdyate. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.11. The absolute truth is perceived in three stages, of which Bhagavan, or realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is meant for the Paramahamsas. Indeed, Srimad Bhagavatam itself is meant for the Paramahamsas. Paramo Nirmatsaranam Satam. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.2. Unless one is in the Paramahamsa stage, he is not eligible to understand the Srimad Bhagavatam. For Paramahamsas or sannyasis in the Vaishnava order, preaching is the first duty. To preach, such sannyasis may accept the symbols of sannyas, such as the danda and kamandalu, or sometimes they may not. Generally, the Vaishnava sannyasis, being Paramahamsas, are automatically called Babajis, and they do not carry a kamandalu or danda. Such a sannyasi is free to accept or reject the marks of sannyas. His only thought is, where is there an opportunity to spread Krishna consciousness? Sometimes the Krishna conscious movement sends its representative sannyasis to foreign countries where the danda and kamandalu are not very much appreciated. We send our preachers in ordinary dress to introduce our books and philosophy. Our only concern is to attract people to Krishna consciousness. We may do this in the dress of sannyasis or in the regular dress of gentlemen. Our only concern is to spread interest in Krishna consciousness. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, this verse speaks of the Paramahamsa among the types of sannyasi. The ashrama or the Paramahamsa, who is peaceful, a great soul, and equal in all circumstance, is not generally for producing qualities in him. That means that the sannyasi who is immature in his gyan should practice yamas and niyamas for purifying his existence. However, when he is mature in jnana, he does not have to practice them. The yamas and niyamas are already accomplished. At that time, he may carry the marks of the sannyasi, such as the staff, to set an example for society, or he may not, since they are not necessary. So in this verse, the quality of a sannyasi is and how to distinguish them from ordinary. The sannyasi who carries a tridanda and kamandalu. But it is not absolutely necessary that they have to accept those symbols. They can also reject them whenever they want to, because they have already realized the absolute truth, which is Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavanirdi Shabdyate. The absolute truth is very well known to them, and they can impart that knowledge. So they are already in the Paramahamsa stage. So they don't need to carry any distinguishing factor for a sannyasi, like the danda or the kamandalu. So this is mostly which is said in the verse.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Dandan Commando. See, Lord Chaitanya, he carried Dandan Commando, and it was Ekadanda because he got sannyas in Mayavada school. But then Nityananda, he thought that Mahaprabhu doesn't need a danda, so he broke it and before they entered the Puri, when they were on the way to Puri, before entering the Puri, and he threw it in the river. There is a river there called Bangadanda Nadi, something like that. where he threw that danda with a tree. He broke it in 3 pieces and threw it in the river. Of course, Mahabharata was not very happy that he did it, but Nityananda thought that Mahaprabhu, he is the highest of all sannyasis, he is the crash jewel, Shiromani of all the sannyasis. Why he should carry this stick? What is the use of the stick? This stick is just to distinguish, sannyasi from other people. It's a symbol of sannyasi. This is some symbols. And in the beginning stages of sannyas, one is supposed to wear them. So you see new sannyasis now, many of them carry, danda wherever they go. But then you see all the sannyasis who are already sannyasis for some years, they don't carry dandas anymore around because it's not really necessary. It's just a symbol, it's a social custom. So it's not necessarily somebody is a sannyasi immediately he is a self-realized. It's a misconception. Yesterday, I saw it quite a few times. Person was a brahmachari, nobody really paid any attention whatsoever to him. And then tomorrow he takes sannyas, he dresses the sannyas dress and he carries a stick. Immediately everybody's falling down and this and that. But it's still same person. He couldn't change overnight. He couldn't become self-realized overnight. But just because the symbols, people are, inclined, we are conditioned or trained in that way that immediately, as soon as it's sannyasi, you give great respect, regardless of actual spiritual advancement. Actual spiritual advancement doesn't have anything to do with the ashram or dress. It's all external. This is some varnashram external things. Self-realization has nothing to do with that. Of course, ideally, Paramahamsa, which is the highest order of sannyas, he is supposed to be self-realized, but there is no guarantee even if one is calling himself Paramahamsa or Babaji or this or that he's self-realized. For example, Thakur, yes,
it's a little cultural. Even Prabhupada used to say that even if it's Mayavadi sannyasi, you should still pay your respects to them because you're respecting the order as opposed to necessarily the individual's purity.
Yeah, it's a cultural thing. It's a cultural thing, but it has nothing really to do with the level of spiritual advancement of that person. So if we are a little more introspective, then we should even pay more obeisances to somebody who is not in a dress of sannyasi, but who is more spiritually advanced. Then that would be a real respect, to this. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, for example, he was a Paramahamsa Vaishnava who was, in a Grihastha ashram. And just imagine now some new sannyasi, he dresses in a sannyas cloth, he carries a stick, and he is still basically neophyte devotee, and then you have Bhaktivinoda Thakur next to him. So whom you go and first and offer your obeisances? To this new sannyasi or Bhaktivinoda Thakur? Of course, we want to offer obeisances to Acharya, Paramahansa Thakur. So he never took sannyas, but he took actually Babaji Vesh last few years of his life. Actually, Babaji Vesh is supposed to be the highest, even above the sannyas, Paramahamsa. Although again, somebody might take Babaji Vesh and still be a cheater or neophyte. Srila Bhaktivinoda Saraswati Thakur, he criticized so many of these Radha Kund, Babajis, who were wearing the highest, the dress of the highest order of Babajis, but they were having illicit affairs. So it's cheating can be there also. So one has to have little discrimination. Yes, but we want to say something more.
I was going to just say it's an interesting Prabhupada's. I mean, I've seen this in other places as well. The last couple of sentences here. It says, we send our preachers in ordinary dresses to introduce our books and philosophy. Our only concern is to attract people to Krishna consciousness. we may do this in the dress of sannyasis or in regular dress of gentlemen. And I think Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati also had a suit and leather shoes and stuff where required, time, place, and circumstance. I'm saying this out of curiosity, perhaps your feedback. I was doing this service for the last 4 or 5 weeks with driving the TOVP team around in Europe with Janivas Prabhu, etc., for the fundraiser. And we arrived at one particular location, and some of those trips were quite long, sort of 8, 10, 12, 16-hour drives between countries. So I was wearing a kurta top and yoga pants, as it wasn't comfortable to wear a dhoti for 12 to 15 hours of driving. And we arrived in a place where there was a sannyasi that greeted us. I apologized to him that I wasn't wearing a dhoti, and he scolded me very, very aggressively.
Really?
Yeah, he said that it's just you're a bogus devotee. Absolutely, he's a Prabhupada disciple. I won't say the name. And he said you're a bogus devotee. Only bogus excuses about not wearing dhotis. It's just absolutely bogus. Prabhupada would not approve. And I thought it's superficial. Yes, I agree that we should, wherever possible, should always be in the garb of a devotee and have the dress of a devotee. But surely your inner consciousness is more important than the outward look for the sake of the look. And in this instance, I actually went up to him to apologize that I wasn't wearing a dhoti because I didn't realize we were going to meet the sannyasi or he was going to greet us. Otherwise, I would have made the effort. But because we were driving, I thought it was okay. Maybe I was wrong. I just wanted
Okay. I think it was okay. You didn't commit any offense. You didn't commit any mistake. You were doing the service. You were driving them. So what does it matter whether it was
He
your
was very heavy-handed. Yeah, he actually. I mean, yeah, the words are ringing in my ears still. Maybe he was right. Of course, he was right.
He was
Calling me
not.
a
He was not.
devotee, but it penetrated my heart, and every moment I keep thinking about that.
It's very
Wow.
superficial. It's a fanaticism, very superficial. Just judging on the basis of dress. It's completely superficial, and I cannot agree about that. He had no right really to chastise you. He actually committed offense. He should be apologizing, not you. Anyway, what can you do? People are like that.
No, but the interesting thing here is that here's Prabhupada clearly saying, essentially saying that the dress, yes, of course, it's important, but it's more important that the message is time, place, and circumstance orientated about preaching rather than necessarily being in the garb of a devotee.
Yes, consciousness and motivation is much, much more important. The dress is just completely external, completely external. Okay, it's nice to have, kurta and dhoti. Some people even, argue that the kurta is actually Muslim thing. It's not even, Vedic thing that Muslims invented it. And there is this Krishna Vast devotees who are, especially one of them, Chandrasekhar Acharya, who is heavily, fighting against Western grihastas being forced to wear dhotis. He's going a bit into another extreme. Let everybody wear whatever they want. It doesn't really matter so much. And he actually posted some video of Shiva Maharaj, I think in Manor. He scolded also some devotees, telling them, uh, oh, you cannot get prema if you don't wear sari or you don't wear dhoti, you cannot get prema. So maybe it was against Shiva Maharaj.
I don't understand, Prabhu. I don't.
Most likely. I don't know so many sannyasis in. Well, he's a senior devotee, definitely. In front of him, what can you say? You cannot argue, but he should not be scolding so heavily for such a small thing. I mean, of course, it's not comfortable to drive in a dhoti. Anyway, but others, Brajula, Janivas, Prabhus, they had dhotis, yeah, in the car. So he didn't scold them.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, if you see the photos of early days Ratha Yatra making, who was there? Jananda. Was he in dhoti? No, he was in that, you know, in the pants with the, you know, with the, you know, this specific sort of pants that he was always wearing, making Ratha Yatra cart. But what was his consciousness? He was doing this for Jagannath. And Prabhupada didn't tell him, oh, why you wear pants while making this Ratha Yatra? No, you should have wear the... This is smart, a smarter way of thinking, smarter way of thinking completely. You know, in Jagannath Puri also, you know, and not only in Jagannath Puri, in some other places in South India, you cannot enter the temple if you have kurta on or even chador on. You have to be in some temples, you have to be bare chested. Because there is in some shastra there is some rule when you offer obeisances, your bare chest has to touch the floor. So they take this as the, you know, the most important rule. So everybody who is entered the temple, he has to has his uttariya, his chador off, and all these sort of things. Fanatical smartism, I would call it. Anyway, Prabhu, you're lucky you got chastised, and you.
Yes, I was. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, let's continue. The Chaturamadat, you would like to continue reading?
Yeah. Sorry. Avyata lingo vyatato manishi umata palavat kavi ukavat tamanam sajistya dashayi Vietnam. Translation. Although a saintly person may not expose himself to the vision of human society, by his behavior his purpose is disclosed. To human society, he should present himself like a restless child, and although he is the greatest thoughtful orator, he should present himself like a dumb man. Purport. A great personality very much advanced in Krishna consciousness may not expose himself by the signs of a sannyasi. To cover himself, he may live like a restless child or a dumb person, although he is the greatest orator or poet. And so this verse is very interesting, that to tell that if a devotee is a self-realized person and very advanced in Krishna consciousness, then he should not disclose himself to the public. On contrary, he should behave like a innocent child and or a dumb man, and pretend himself to be a very humble. No pretend, sorry, to become very humble and not show himself or he is very advanced in Krishna consciousness, and not show any that is to hide himself from the ordinary people, and not to disclose all he knew, all he knows to the public. I think that is the main point.
It's not that he should always disguise himself. He may choose if he wants to. It's up to him how he wants to present, whether he wants to dress as sannyasi or not. It's his choice. If he is self-realized, he can do whatever he wants and nobody can criticize him. Whether he wants to dress as sannyasi, he's free to do that. If he doesn't want and wants just to travel as avaduta, naked, or whatever he wants, he can do. It was Jad Bharat, who was Maharaj Bharat in his previous life. In the next life, he was born as Jad Bharat, and then he pretended to be a dumb person, and that he had a purpose, that he didn't want to be distracted and fall down again. He just wanted to completely remain absorbed in his meditation, in samadhi, and didn't want to talk to people. But then on certain occasion, when this Maharaj Rahugana stopped him and he was carrying his palanquin, he talked philosophy. So then, through talking, he revealed that he was actually a greatly self-realized person. So you cannot judge a person just on the basis of external look. Especially, you cannot judge him on the basis of dress. Like Prabhu was mentioning, that he was judged just because he didn't wear a dhoti. This is very superficial, very external. You cannot judge consciousness of a person just on the basis of his cloth. It's really improbable. He was very clear. He didn't have anything against book distributors going in the street and distributing books in ordinary clothes. He says clothes of the gentleman. So these are just
Yeah,
very external things. Yes, Mataji.
we missed the Vishwanatha Chakravarti
And you can
Thakur.
finish that. You can finish that.
Yeah, Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur. He becomes like this in order to avoid falling from his concentration. He does not have the external characteristics of the sannyasi, but he is fixed in his purpose of seeking Atma. Prabhu, just now you mentioned he may, but I see the translation. Srila Prabhupada used to should. To human society, he should present himself like a restless child, and then he should present himself like a dumb man.
Yeah, but before that, he says, may not expose himself. Saintly person may not expose himself. So for that person who wants to remain hidden, then he should. But if he doesn't want to remain hidden, then it's an option. It's not the order. First, he says he may. He may. Again, in the purport, he says, may not expose himself by the signs of sannyasi. It's his choice. It's his choice. But if he doesn't want to be exposed, then he should. So it's just.
Yeah, is that mean a great personality if he don't want to disclose himself to the public, he may behave like a child, yeah?
Yeah, then he should behave like a child. He doesn't want to be exposed. If he doesn't want others to know his position, then he should behave like this, like a dumb person, like a child, similarly. But it's his choice, depending on his desire.
Yeah, then I understand that means a sannyasi have some choices. One is that you disclose yourself and maybe you carry a danda and maybe not. And then maybe one not disclose himself. So
Yeah,
this sannyasi, this great personality, he can choose, yeah?
yeah, he can choose. He can choose. So maybe there are some sannyasis walking around and we don't recognize them because they don't reveal that they're sannyasis.
Oh, yeah. Good.
But most likely, majority of people, they would like to show off as sannyasi. Even some who are not sannyasis, they dress like a sannyasi to attract attention, adoration, and worship. So
Yeah. Okay.
anyway, the dress is secondary. What matters is consciousness, your inner, consciousness. You can dress as a sannyasi as much as you want. If your consciousness is materialistic, it won't help you. It will help you to get, worship and donation maybe, but it will not help you make spiritual advancement. So it will be a stumbling block and it will be a cheating also. All right, let's continue. Gunraj Prabhu, are you there? Can you read?
Yes, Prabhu. अत्रापि उदाहरन्तिमम् इतिहासं पुरातनं प्रह्लादस्य च संवादं मुनेराजगरस्य च. Translation. As a historical example of this, learned sages recite the story of an ancient discussion between Prahlada Maharaja and a great saintly person who was feeding himself like a python. Purport. The saintly person met by Prahlad Maharaja was undergoing Ajagara Virti, the living conditions of a python, which does not go anywhere but sits in one place for years and eats whatever is automatically available. Prahlad Maharaja, along with his associates, met this great saint and spoke to him as follows. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura comments, Ajagarasya means maintaining himself like a python.
You can read one more because there's not much here.
Tam sayanam daropaste kaveryam sahya sanuni rajas valais tanu deshair nigudamala tejasam dadarsha lokan vicharan lokatatva vivitsaya vrito amatyai katipayai prahrado bhagavat priya. Translation. Prahlad Maharaja, the most dear servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, once went out touring the universe with some of his confidential associates just to study the nature of saintly persons. Thus, he arrived at the bank of Kaveri, where there was a mountain known as Sakhya. There he found a great saintly person who was lying on the ground, covered with dirt and dust, but who was deeply spiritually advanced. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura comments, Sakhya Saununi means on a plateau of the Sakhya mountain. He had dust on the limbs of his body. Tanu Deshai.
You want one more?
Yeah. Karmana Krutibir Vacha Lingair Varnasharamadibihi Na Vidanti Jnana Yam Vai So Asau Itina Veticha. Translation. Neither by that saintly person's activities, by his bodily features, by his words, nor by the symptoms of his Varnashrama status could people understand whether he was the same person they had known. Purport. The inhabitants of that particular place on the bank of the Kaveri, in the valley of the mountain known as Sakhya, were unable to understand whether that saint was the same man they had known. It is therefore said, Vaishnavera Kriya Mudra Vinyena Bhujaya. A highly advanced Vaishnava lives in such a way that no one can understand what he is or what he was, nor should attempts be made to understand the past of a Vaishnava. Without asking the saintly person about his previous life, Prahlad Maharaja immediately offered him respectful obeisances.
Anything you want to note from this?
Yeah, the only thing is that a Vaishnava should not be understood just by his appearance. No? Whatever ashrama or whatever appearance and whatever activities he's doing should not become no judgment to understand his position, spiritual position.
Yeah, this is famous verse Vaishnavera Kriya Mudra. The ordinary people cannot understand the mind of a Vaishnava. Like we cannot understand Krishna's mind, similarly, Vaishnava's mind and way of thinking is beyond the comprehension of of normal people. So any attempt to judge him will not be successful, and it might lead to offenses. Of course, one should not misuse that and say, I'm a Vaishnava and I can do any foolish and stupid thing. You cannot judge me because I'm a Vaishnava. This is again misuse of title Vaishnava. Uh, but this is meant for genuinely advanced Vaishnava. All right, let's go again. I'll read now. Tam natva bhyarcha vidivat padayo shirasa sprishan vivitsu idam aprakshin mahabhagavato asuraham. The advanced devotee Prahlad Maharaj duly worshipped and offered obeisances to the saintly person who had adopted a python's means of livelihood. After thus worshipping the saintly person and touching his own head to the saint's lotus feet, Prahlad Maharaj, in order to understand him, inquired very submissively as follows. Vishwanath Thakur comments, the people born in that place wanted to know who he was. They couldn't recognize him, but Prahlad Maharaj, he immediately recognized by certain symptoms because he was himself advanced. So then, advanced person can recognize another advanced person. Neophyte, he cannot distinguish. So that's why neophytes tend to be cheated. If you dress as advanced person, you can cheat many neophytes and mislead them. But you cannot cheat the real Vaishnava. Vibarshikayam pivanam sodhyamo bhagavan yatha vittam chaivodhyamavatam bhogo vithavatamiha bhoginam khalu dehoyam piva bhavati nanyatha. Seeing the saintly person to be quite fat, Prahlad Maharaj said, My dear sir, you undergo no endeavor to earn your livelihood, but you have a stout body, exactly like that of a materialistic enjoyer. I know that if one is very rich and has nothing to do, he becomes extremely fat by eating and sleeping and performing no work. Purport. Sri Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur did not like his disciples to become very fat in the course of time. He would become very anxious upon seeing his fat disciples becoming bogies or enjoyers of the senses. This attitude is herewith confirmed by Prahlad Maharaj, who was surprised to see a saintly person adopting a jagara vritti and becoming very fat. In the material world also, we generally see that when a man who is poor and skinny gradually endeavors to earn money through business or some other means, and he then gets the money, he enjoys the senses to his satisfaction. By enjoying the senses, one becomes fat. Therefore, in spiritual advancement, becoming fat is not at all satisfactory. Vishnu Thakur says, Pivana means fat. You cannot say that your body has become fat simply by nature. Those who endeavor become wealthy, those who become wealthy enjoy, those who enjoy become fat. One becomes fat by endeavor, not naturally. So this is very interesting point. Well, we cannot use it now and go to each and every devotee and tell him, oh, why you are fat? You must be enjoying the senses. The person may have such a constitution that kapha bodily constitution, even if you eat a little, somehow you tend to gain weight. But of course, caution should be there that it may indicate that person is eating too much because if you see photos of many people when they were young, they were very nice looking without big belly, and then 20 years later there is a big belly, so that means these 20 years sense control was not up to the standard or something like that. That's why Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he didn't like his disciples getting fat. It could indicate that the senses are not under the control and person is just eating too much. All right, can we make a circle again? Was it Shailesh Prabhu? You like to read one more? I can read the Sanskrit.
Yes, please, Prabhu. Thank you.
Nate Shayanasya Nirudhyamasya Brahmanu Harto Yatta Eva Bhoga Abhogino Ayam Thava Vipradeha Vivayatastadvadana Kshamam Chit.
Translation. O Brahmana, fully in knowledge of transcendence, you have nothing to do, and therefore you are lying down. It is also understood that you have no money for sense enjoyment. How then has your body become so fat? Under the circumstances, if you do not consider my question impudent, kindly explain how this has happened. Perfect. Generally, those engaged in spiritual advancement take food only once, either in the afternoon or in the evening. If one takes food only once, naturally he does not become fat. The learned sage, however, was quite fat, and therefore Prahlad Maharaj was very much surprised. Because of being experienced in self-realization, a transcendentalist certainly becomes bright-faced, and one who is advanced in self-realization must be considered to possess the body of a Brahmana. Because the bright-faced saintly person was lying down and not working, and yet was quite fat, Prahlad Maharaj was puzzled and wanted to question him about this. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, you are just guessing that I must be endeavoring based on the logic that if fat, then Devadatta does not eat in the day, he must eat at night. Nu means certainly. Ha means it is clear. By his effulgence, Prahlad understands he is a Brahmana. So I'm not sure what to comment here, apart from Prabhupada's interpretation on purport that saintly people tend to eat only once and thereby regulate their diet. But Prahlad Maharaj was able to recognize the saintly person by his effulgence and therefore asked the question.
Yeah, that looks like this eating only once in afternoon or in the evening. This looks like a fasting, in the Kadashis or the fasting days we might eat in the afternoon or in the evening, Ekadashi preparations. Otherwise, I don't know too many people who eat only once a day. Although it's certainly, if one can do it, it's actually healthy. You save time by eating once, and it's sort of how's it called? Interimminent, something like that, fasting.
Intermediate fasting.
Yes, yeah, intermediate fasting, because then you give the body time to regenerate. If you don't eat 16 or 18 hours and you eat only very short lifespan of 6 hours, then the body has time to detoxify and regenerate. So it's actually healthy practice if one can do it. But some people, they have, for example, high pitta, so they have to eat in the morning, otherwise they get a headache and things like this. One should also take in consideration type of the body for this sort of austerities. But here we have a person who is basically homeless, living on the street, and he's very fat. Yeah, I think in America I saw quite a few homeless persons, and I don't remember how many of them were fat, really. They didn't certainly look very bright-faced. Most of them were stoned on drugs. So yeah, if somehow they managed to get money for drugs, probably they could manage to get for food. All right, who is next there? Shanti Rupa Mataji.
Yes, Prabhu. कवि कल्पो निपुण दृक् चित्र प्रिय कथा सम कुर्वत कर्म शेषे तद वीक्षितापि वा. Translation. Your honor appears learned, expert, and intelligent in every way. You can speak very well, saying things that are pleasing to the heart. You see that people in general are engaged in fruitive activities, yet you are lying here inactive. Purport. Prahlad Maharaj studied the bodily features of the saintly person, and through the saint's physiognomy, Prahlad Maharaj could understand that he was intelligent and expert, although he was lying down and not doing anything. Prahlad was naturally inquisitive about why he was lying there inactive. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, "Why do you conclude this? I desire the nectar of your words to make myself successful. Since you seem to be endowed with wisdom, capability, astuteness, and other qualities, by seeing your auspicious bodily features, you lie down while looking at people engaged in actions with disgust, or perhaps looking at them out of curiosity." So in this verse, Prahlad Maharaj is inquisitive about the ways of the Brahmana. He could understand that he was a very learned Brahmana, but he was inquisitive that he was lying down with a very fat body and very inactive. And so that is the main this thing.
Yeah, interestingly, that he could understand that it was a saintly person by studying physiognomy. Physiognomy is a science through which, by studying the person's facial characteristics, the characteristics of the face, you can recognize some of the person's qualities. How does that work? Well, the states of mind sooner or later become visible on the face. For example, if somebody is angry all the time, he's pressing his teeth and he's making certain expressions. And if he does that constantly over the years, it becomes visible on his face. When you see somebody who looks dangerous or who looks relaxed. There are different faces. So if one studies this science, actually, he can read the face of a person and then tell what the mind of that person is. Once I met one homeopathic doctor who could diagnose me just by looking at my face. He told me, you have this problem this and that. Just by looking at my face, actually, he could diagnose what bodily problems I had. So I was quite impressed how well he actually diagnosed me. Some other people would need, to do many tests and this and that, but no, he was just doing it by looking at my face, diagnosing my bodily ailments. So it's quite a science. So Apparently, Prahlad Maharaj knew that science, so he could judge that this Brahmana lying down was actually intelligent and expert. He was not dumb and a stupid person just by looking at his face. But again, we cannot judge just on the basis of external appearance, like a body, if fat or skinny. It's not enough. Like you cannot judge just on the basis of dress. You cannot judge on the basis whether one is skin or fat, because the mind is not visible that much unless you know the science of physiognomy. Then you can read the mind on the face. Otherwise, just by bodily features like how much fat one is, you cannot say his spiritual status. All right. Chatura Mataji, are you there?
Yeah, Prabhu.
Okay.
Shri Narada Uvacha Sa Iham Daitya Pitina Pariprishto Mahamuniha Smayam Manastam Vyatha Tava Amrita Yanchitaha. Translation. Narada Muni continued, when the saintly person was thus questioned by Prahlad Maharaj, the king of the deities, he was captivated by this shower of nectarian words, and he replied to the inquisitiveness of Prahlad Maharaj with a smiling face. No, Papa.
Can read one more.
Okay. Shri Brahmana Uvacha Vededam Asura Shrestha Pavan Na Vaya Samadaha Iho Paran Mayo Ninam Padani Adhyatya Adhyamachakshusha. Translation. The saintly Brahman said, O best of the Asuras, Prahlad Maharaj, who are recognized by advanced and civilized men, you are aware of the different stages of life because of your inherent transcendental eyes, with which you can see a man's character and thus know clearly the results of acceptance and rejection of things as they are. Purport. A pure devotee like Prahlad Maharaj can understand the minds of others because of his pure vision in devotional service. A devotee like Prahlad Maharaj can study another man's character without difficulties. So in these two verses,
Vishnu Thakur also purport here.
oh, so Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur, by your inner version, Dhyama Chakshusha, you know this. What do I know? You know the results, Stanani, of work with desire and with no desire. Iho paranmayo. If I did not know the suffering of people who made themselves fat by endeavoring from enjoyment, I will make those endeavors. This is his indication. So these two verses just talks about how Prahlad Maharaj can judge people characteristic by studying their people's features, bodily features. And so although the saint didn't say anything, Prahlad Maharaj still can find out this person is not an ordinary human being, but a great personality. And then in order to answer a Prahlad Maharaj question, and then he replied to Prahlad Maharaj with a smiling face. And also we should, one more thing we should understand that Prahlad Maharaj can judge the people's body feature by his pure vision, because he is a pure devotee of the Lord. So if a devotee is not so pure in his consciousness, he cannot see whether this person is advanced in Krishna consciousness or not. From this point of view, if we want to study the nature of a great devotee, so we must make ourselves to advance in this spiritual path. Okay.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, so pure devotee, in pure consciousness, it's easy for him to read the minds of others. We have many examples of Prabhupada disciples saying how they felt that Prabhupada knew everything about them, and they felt completely exposed. They couldn't hide anything from Prabhupada. Because when one has a pure consciousness, pure vision, then Krishna in the heart reveals him everything he needs to know about you. So it's something quite useful for somebody who is performing a function of a guru. Of course, he has to have this pure consciousness, pure vision in order to be able to help disciples. Otherwise, if he's not there, then it will be difficult for him to help him, because he just doesn't know anything about you. All right, we have just few more minutes left. I think only Gunaraj Prabhu is left. Like to read a little more, Gunaraj
Yes,
Prabhu?
Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu. यस्य नारायणो देवो भगवान् हृद्गतः सदा भक्तिया केवलया ज्ञानं धुनोति द्वान्तम् अर्कवत्. Translation. Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is full of all opulences, is predominant within the core of your heart because of your being a pure devotee. He always drives away all the darkness of ignorance, as the sun drives away the darkness of the universe. Purport. The words Bhaktiya Kevalaya indicates that simply by executing devotional service, one can become full of all knowledge. Krishna is the master of all knowledge. Aishwaryasya samagrasya viryasya yasasya. Sirya. Vishnu Purana 6.5.47. The Lord is situated in everyone's heart. Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam. Hrideshe Arjuna Tishtati. Bhagavad Gita 18.61. And when the Lord is pleased with a devotee, the Lord instructs him. Only to the devotees, however, does the Lord give instruction by which to advance further and further in devotional service. To others, the non-devotees, the Lord gives instructions according to the manner of their surrender. The pure devotee is described by the words Bhaktiya Kevalaya. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura explains that Bhaktiya Kevalaya means Jnana Karmadi Amishraya, unmixed with fruitive activities or speculative knowledge. Simply surrendering at the lotus feet is the cause of all a devotee's enlightenment and awareness. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura comments, he explains why Prahlada has knowledge. Kevalaya means bhakti without a mixture of jnana or karma. So here it's explained that the Lord is guiding inside, from the heart, the pure devotees, how he can advance in the devotional service. Whereas for non-devotees, he is just helping them according to the level of their surrender. Whereas the pure devotee is, he doesn't have any jnana karmadi mixture. There is no mixing of fruitive activities or speculative knowledge in his devotional service. So in that way, a pure devotee is identified.
Thank you. Yeah, this was assessment of pure devotee by. So Prahlad Maharaj, he could see that Brahmana, who that he was advanced, and Brahmana could also see that Prahlad was also advanced. So two advanced devotees, they can recognize each other's. One neophyte devotee cannot do that. Okay, I think it's 6:30 exactly, so we can stop here and continue next Wednesday. Thank you very much. Vanchakalpatrivasya kripa sindhu
Sarvapattanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you very much.